Today we're going to be looking at the Goodie, a quote-unquote self-folding ultra-compact from Chicco. Chicco's a budget brand with wide reach, both in terms of the variety of products that they sell, as well as where in the world they sell them. And while the Goodie then is just one of a whole stadium's worth of models they've pitched to the lower and mid-range segments of the market, it's also a stroller that a lot of people have asked us to review. And today then, we're going to take an in-depth look at the model, judging it in terms of comfort, ease of use, performance and mechanics, as well as which uses and environments it's best suited for. So let's get started then, beginning with some stats, where the Goodie clocks in at 6.9 kilos and folds down to 25 by 46.5 by 56 centimeters, with the bumper bar removed, which is a little above the IATA's guidelines for cabin luggage, though this can be remedied by removing the rear wheels. The model can take 22 kilos in the seat and 3 kilos in the underslung shopping basket. And starting off with the seat then, the Goodie has a width of 34 centimeters and a total length of 108, with the seat fully upright at least, as a lot of that room is a result of space between the seat back and canopy. And overall then, I would set the age span for maximum comfort at around 2.5 or so. The model sports both a fully reclinable seat back and an adjustable leg rest, which, in theory, allows for use with newborns, though my opinion here is that it's best to limit newborn use to shorter holidays and the like, as models of this sort are too fragile and poor in their terrain capabilities to provide the same safety as full-sized models. The Goodie's canopy provides relatively average sun coverage for an ultra-compact, at least with the hood extended, but the quality of the textiles overall is a bit thin and cheap in my opinion. And in addition, the Goodie's seat also consists of a few problematic mechanical areas that speak to cheaper manufacture in my experience, and that the mechanism for regulating the leg rest is built almost entirely of weak plastic components and is unlikely to take much from the swinging legs of an older toddler without breaking. The seat recline mechanism relies on a rather fragile setup for fixing itself into various positions, which I could also see breaking rather easily down the line. The canopy mechanisms are a bit fiddly to lock in place and explosively noisy as well. And though it might be nitpicking, the bumper bar doesn't have a 360-degree swivel, which I personally find somewhat annoying. Moving on to parent comfort, the first thing to address is the Goodie's fold, which I'll admit is pretty nifty, especially since you don't need to adjust the seat back or the canopy before setting it in motion. But in general, please note that it's not like competing models without this feature are exactly difficult to fold down, and thus, in my opinion, it's important not to let this be your sole reason for purchasing the Goodie. Looking beyond the fold, the model has a fixed handle that stands at 103 centimeters off the ground, which might be a little low for taller people, and a rather standard shopping basket for a stroller of this sort, meaning unfortunately, somewhat small and unpleasant to access, at least in comparison to larger models. As far as driving is concerned, the Goodie's wheels are on the lower end of average for ultra-compacts, 5 inches in the front and 6 in the back, making this definitely not the sort of model that you'll want to drive around on anything other than smooth pavement and indoor environments. In addition, the chassis feels a bit flimsy in general, in particular when used closer to the upper end of the Goodie's weight capacity, and strains a bit at the stroller's hinged points when tipping up the front end to mount curbs, as well as having a tendency to be difficult to swivel when fully loaded. Moving on to look at the mechanics of the model, we'll start with the overall structure of the chassis, where the flip side of that cool-looking auto-fold function comes with a long series of interconnected internal mechanisms required to pull it off, which begins with a 2-part handle activation that uses a pair of wires to release the first hinge, and which in turn retracts an additional dual wire-like setup at a slower rate in order to finally activate a pin on the opposite end of a third pair of bars, that then expand telescopically to complete the fold. As I said, nifty, like a clockwork toy, but also fragile in its complexity unfortunately, being both susceptible to alignment problems as well as failing if any one of a dozen smaller components are forced too much and break. The model does thankfully have good horizontal support due to a welded rear crossbar and a solid front frame, in addition to the support of the handle and the seat apparatus, but at the same time, the overall structure of the chassis is also fitted together nearly entirely with rivets, which means that as they loosen over time, it won't be easy for average users to tighten up the connection points to prevent damage to those internal components. In addition, when folded down, the model relies only on internal resistance from these mechanisms to stay folded together. It doesn't actually lock, and over time, I foresee the handle in particular as likely to loosen, perhaps even to the point where it folds out as you try to lift the chassis by the bumper bar. Moving on down to the rear frame of the model, again there's that welded crossbar, which I do like, and the model also has a certain degree of suspension, which, though nice, unfortunately won't really increase the model's terrain capability due to the smaller wheel size. The brake system is simple and rotation-based, which is good, but the smaller than average proportions of the housings containing the brake pins can be felt when activating the brake pedal, making the system feel a bit weak versus ultra compacts with comparable systems. And lastly, looking at the rear wheels, though the tires are pretty standard for ultra compacts, I'm a bit iffy on the relatively thin, transparent plastic rims, which at the very least will get pretty scratched up and foggy looking over time. And I also would have liked the wheels to sit a bit tighter in the rear frame, as loose rear wheels on a model of this size really makes for a rickety driving experience, especially after the rest of the chassis has loosened up a bit. Finishing off with the front frame, there's decent suspension built into the forks, which is again nice, but won't see much use due to overall terrain capability. The Goodie doesn't have swivel locks, or removable front forks for that matter, but instead has a setup very similar in appearance to the Yo-Yo, though unfortunately both with forks that sit a little too loose in their housings, and also with wheels that have been riveted within those forks, meaning that if you have trouble with the front wheels, it'll be a pretty major job to replace anything. And note here that there have already been a few reports of swivel issues, though to be fair, nothing so far that wouldn't likely be fixed with a little lubrication. So, should you get the Chicco Goody then? My general impression of the model is that, despite a few positives in the form of that cool fold, having the bumper bar and rain cover included with purchase, and clocking it at a generally reasonable price point, at least elsewhere in the world, we bought it for close to the price of the Yo-Yo here in Norway. There are still several other models within its price class that are built with better longevity, have better seat characteristics, will provide a more compact fold, and deliver better overall driving performance than the Goody. And for this reason then, despite not being the worst model in its price class, I personally would generally go for something else. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, we ask you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. In addition, if you're currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page, which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle related information. You can find it by following the link in the description. Thank you.